Morning, everyone. My name is Spencer Smith, and I'm an engineer at Talos Systems. I've got a client that's wanting to use CentOS Stream as in a VM as a dev box. So I wanted to make a quick video of how to install Talos Ctl and get a Talos cluster up and running in Docker on CentOS Stream, so that they can kind of keep the same workflow between their dev boxes and for their production environment. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is I'll just point out that this is mostly just kind of grabbed from a few different docs on the internet. The first one being the Docker docs themselves on installing Docker Engine for CentOS. There's a small wrinkle in this just because CentOS Stream comes with Podman pre-installed and it kind of conflicts with Docker. So we'll cover that in a second, but we'll install Docker. We'll install Talos Ctl from the release pages. Talos Systems is the org and Talos is the repo. So you can head out to our releases page there and you'll see a bunch of assets. And we'll go ahead and scoop one of those up here in a minute. And then finally, we'll talk about installing Cube Ctl on CentOS. Again, this is straight from the Kubernetes docs, but just kind of consolidating all this in one place is kind of nice to have. So first things first, I've got this VirtualBox VM that I've created. I'm going to log into it. The only real change I've made to this, other than it being an absolutely basic install of CentOS Stream, is in the settings and the network. I changed this to a bridged adapter just so I can SSH in, just because I didn't want to muck around with VirtualBox guest editions and all that stuff. So I went ahead and just threw it on a bridged adapter, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the networking on here, and then I'll do an IPA and find my IP address. So 192.168.1.131. Let me go ahead and SSH in there, and we'll get started. Uh, 1.131. Let me blow this up a little bit. Okay, so logging in, we're now connected to this VM via SSH. And the first thing we're going to do is install a package called yum-utils. And so this is going to be a sudo yum install -y yum-utils. And yum-utils provides a package that Docker wants you to use for configuring the repositories, for configuring their repositories. And so I'm going to copy and paste this command because it's kind of long. But we'll do a yum config manager add repo, and then we'll give it the Docker community edition repo. So we'll do a yum config manager for that and activate that repo. The next thing we're going to do is a yum install, and this is going to be a little tricky, and I'll explain why. Let's clear this to kind of clear things up, but we'll do a sudo yum install docker-ce community edition, docker-ce-cli, the Docker CLI, and containerd.io. But what you'll see is if I were to issue this, it will cause a problem complaining about Podman and how it conflicts with some of the things here. So what we'll actually do is on that same command, we'll add a --allow erasing flag, and that should allow it to replace those Podman packages with the Docker packages. So we'll say yes to that and off to the races. Go ahead and add the repos, add the keys, or add the keys, not the repos, and install these packages. And it shouldn't take too long. Okay, and so now we'll go ahead and do a sudo systemctl start Docker to start the Docker process. And once that's up and running, we'll do one more command before we log out and log back in. So what I'll do is I'll do a sudo usermod -ag Docker, and this is going to add my user to the Docker group, so I don't have to do a sudo for every Docker command I want to run. And I'll do $user, so that's my local user rsmitty in this case. So I'll add that guy as a Docker user. I'll exit. I'll come back in. just to reload my sessions or my bash profiles and all that good stuff. And then I should be able to do Docker PS. Cool. So now that that's working, we have Docker installed. Now we'll go ahead and scoop up Talos Ctl, and we'll get start getting a cluster created. So out here on the releases page, like I told you, if you head out to our latest release, 091 at this time, there is a Talos Ctl AMD 64. So I'm going to copy the link to that, and then I'll do a wget of that, and go ahead and pull that down. And then I will chmod, make it executable, and then I'll move it into the bin, user local bin. So just chmod +x, Talos Ctl, and then sudo move, Talos Ctl, user local bin, Talos Ctl. Throw in a password for that, and then I should be able to do a Talos Ctl version. Cool. So we've got Talos Ctl client installed locally. Now it's time to go ahead and start creating a cluster. So that's as easy as Talos Ctl cluster create. And that will go ahead and pull down the Talos 091 images. I'm using all the defaults here because it's going to pull the latest release, and that's all good stuff because that's what we need right now. So that's going to create some Docker containers. So if I SSH in again, oh, I've forgotten my IP address. Hang tight. 1131. Okay, let's blow this one up a little bit. Clear that. So I'll do a Docker PS. You can see there's a couple of containers running, one master, one worker by default. You can also dump out logs if you wanted to see exactly what was going on. So I can do Docker logs Talos default master 1. And I can see that it's gone through the bootstrap sequence. It's actually done, and it's waiting on API ID to come up for the worker. So if I wanted to check the worker's logs, I can do worker 1. Same deal. I can see that it's waiting on API ID to come up. Probably unpacking the API ID container and getting it all set up. So good stuff there. It's just a waiting game. And then in the meantime, I'll go ahead and install Cube Ctl here on this bottom window while our cluster creates. It shouldn't take but another minute or two. So from these docs in the Kubernetes documentation, there's a pretty large yum repo definition here that I'm gonna just kind of copy and paste, and that's gonna write it into my yum repos.d. So I'll go ahead and grab that and throw it down here. Oh, need to sudo that, I suppose. Yeah. Let's see. Let me clear this. I'll do a sudo. Let me switch users, and then we'll just do it from there. And I'll go ahead and cat this out. So that is now present in etc yum repos.d, kubernetes.repo. Cool. Get out of super user, and then now I can just do a sudo yum install -y Cube Ctl. Awesome. So that is installed. Waiting on this worker to connect. It can be a little bit of a time delay here just because the worker relies on the masters to be up and running completely, and for Kubernetes to be up and running as well before it can actually bootstrap itself. So it may take just a hot second here. In the meantime, though, I should be able to Talos Ctl version, give that, let me clear that, give that a nodes flag -n and say 10.5.0.2, and I can see that API-ID is up for the master node. And so that the server kind of indicates that, right? So it actually connects to that box and gets the Talos Ctl or the Talos version and all that good stuff. I can also do some other interesting things out here against that node. Like I can say dashboard, and that gives me a pretty slick looking dashboard here, showing me all the good stuff that's running on this machine, or on this Docker container inside of Talos. So I can see my Cube API servers and the kubelet and all that good stuff. And then looks like finally we're getting close now. So everything's finished bootstrapping. It's waiting for Cube Ctl get node. Like if I do a Cube Ctl get nodes, oh, we're not there yet. It will replace your Kubernetes config automatically as soon as this bootstrapping is done. So we're just waiting on this node to report ready. So it's checking in, waiting for it to report ready, and then we'll be ready to go. And so again, I can kind of see where it's at in that process. Oh, there it goes. Finished before I can get there. Okay, so the join, the worker is now there. Everything is kind of pre-configured. You can see it gives you some nice output around your network CIDR, and so it's easy to know what these IPs are, just because they're all kind of printed for you in this handy little spot. And then you can also see that it merges your kube config upon the successful completion of launching this cluster. So my kube config has now been updated, and so now where I failed earlier, I can do a kubectl get nodes, and I can see that both of my containers, both of my Talos nodes are online, and they should be ready for workload. So all the things are up and running. API server is up, DNS is up. I can now throw my applications at them and prototype things out locally, just like I would run them in Talos out in the cloud, out in AWS. So that's a quick guide on doing this with CentOS Stream. It's very similar to most other Linux distros, but this is kind of, like I say, consolidating all those instructions in one spot. So hope this is helpful. Hope you guys enjoy. Thanks.